Full-time Manchester United 1, Chelsea 1. Daniel Childs here to give you my rational perspective on this afternoon's game at Old Trafford. Chelsea unable to break their over 10-year, I think it is now, curse of not winning a Premier League game at Old Trafford. We didn't lose. It wasn't the worst afternoon or evening we've had in recent times at Old Trafford. But I'm quite conflicted because my overriding feeling is one of frustration. I think Chelsea have dropped 2 points today. I think in the context of going 1-0 down and feeling like this game was going to end in an abject fashion for Chelsea and somehow again conspire to lose to a pretty poor and chaotic Man United side, I credit the response and the response of one man who I'm going to give a lot of credit for, which is obviously Moises Caicedo. But I just can't help get away from the feeling that Chelsea didn't do enough today. I don't think they took a hold of the game as much as they could have, especially during periods of the first half where in kind of build-up, I thought we did a lot of good things. I thought we were composed in build-up, but just that lack of precision or lack of good decision-making in the final third really costing Chelsea, which is not a criticism I've really levelled at Chelsea this season. You know, it's one of those things that, a creative point of view, I've been really encouraged by what I've seen so far this season under Enzo Maresca. But today, I think the lack of clear-cut opportunities, you know, it's kind of the contrast. It wasn't the sense that Man United were so defensively rigid and well set up to nullify us. It kind of felt like our own indecision or poor touches or poor decision making when we got into those areas really scuppered the opportunity for Chelsea to dominate this game and then put themselves in a position based on kind of one of the big negatives of Chelsea currently and has been for some time, you know, costing us again. And I think that's really frustrating because sure, it isn't a defeat, and when you actually look at the Premier League table, you can't go overboard and say, oh, it's rubbish because, you know, Chelsea are in the top four, they're level on points of Arsenal. If I told you Chelsea at this point in the season, I think we have now played, 10 games, we'd be level on points of Arsenal, we'd, you know, be in the top four, we'd be above Aston Villa, we'd be above Tottenham, we'd be quite comfortably above Man United. I don't think many of us could honestly say that's a bad situation to be in at this point of the season. But of course, it's not all just about hypotheticals where you were thinking about in August. It's what you actually see. And I think that my sense is Chelsea and just generally that the feeling should be one of frustration today because there was a real opportunity, I think, for Chelsea to even, you know, go third. And the fact that Nottingham Forest are there, a testament to Nottingham Forest's brilliant start to the year. But I think Chelsea will feel like, again, another big game as well. I mean, I know, listen, in terms of table wise, it's a little bit misleading with Man United and it's kind of hard to feel, but it still is a big game, Man United Chelsea. And, you know, the Man City game, the Liverpool game, and now this one, I still am not as positive about that. I feel like I repeat myself pretty consistently. I'm not as positive about that Man City opening game as others have been. But if I just look at the Liverpool game, you know, Chelsea, I don't think were bad in that game. And on another day, I think could have come away with a positive result. I'm more negative about this game. I don't think it's the case that Chelsea were unlucky today by any stretch of the imagination. You know, you've got to factor in that Man United had some good looks at goal, even though in kind of overall play, you'd say Chelsea looked the more cohesive, coherent team, which you could have said before a ball was kicked today. So yeah, a little bit conflicted. The starting 11 was the one that I think was very easy to predict and kind of again signals how much that B team failed in midweek, that there wasn't even the chance. It felt like so obvious that we were going to see the same starting 11 as against Newcastle. I think the big conversation going into this game that I had in my preview was Reece James, Malo Gusto, who starts where? And we continued with Reece James at left back and Malo Gusto playing at right back. And that became kind of a frustration during the first half because Malo Gusto picked up a lot of number 10 positions, kind of those inside right positions that he's been doing so far this year. And it's where Chelsea were gaining a lot of territory and kind of space. It felt like, you know, Rashford wasn't really tracking back that well and Chelsea were quite consistently able to get themselves into that area. I think on both, you know, counts of Malo Gusto's execution not being great and Noni Madueke having a pretty poor game, I think both of those sides let Chelsea, both of the parts of that on that side of the pitch for Chelsea in the first half really let us down, being able to really capitalise on that really, because I felt like there was a brief spell of pressure very early on with Man United, but it felt like once Chelsea composed themselves and then you get Caicedo and Lavia really controlling things in midfield, I thought it was almost looked like a back three, really, quite a wide back three where Fofana was on the right, Colwell centre, and you had Reece James not really playing as a left back, more as a left centre back in possession. And you had Lavia, Caicedo in front. Caicedo would press up at times more than Lavia would. And then you would have, of course, Pedro Neto, Cole Palmer, Noni Madueke, and Nicholas Jackson, and of course also Malo Gusto moving into that inside right position, which gave Chelsea, I think, a lot of passing options and their ability to connect passes quite seamlessly in that kind of first part of our build-up, I thought was a lot better. That's the difference, I think, between the way we can build up with this team comparative to the midweek team, which can't build up and has a lot of frailties to them. You see how, if a team does press us, I don't think United are not the most intense and cohesive pressers. That's one of the things they're kind of known for, not being that cohesive with their pressing. But it just shows you Chelsea were a lot better with that and being able to connect. But it just, the lack of opportunities in the first half, clear-cut opportunities. It felt like both Palmer and Jackson today were mostly nullified, I have to say, or mostly absent, it felt like, from Chelsea's best moments. And you've got to say those are Chelsea's two most influential, creative attacking players in terms of numbers. So the fact that both of them didn't have many big moments, I think signalled why Chelsea's attack wasn't as good today. Neto had a shot that flashed wide in the second half. Madueke, of course, hit the post very early on from close range. Could have done a lot better with that, obviously. But overall in attack, Chelsea were not at their flowing best, which again, you come up against the Man United side. At times as well, Dalot got a yellow card in the first half. Ugarte got a yellow card in the first half. And there were opportunities there to go into. So it's just, again, maybe a lack of still experience with this group, but I think that's a lazy excuse because we have had players who've played together for a little bit now and have taken on these teams. Maybe it's that kind of maturity that needs to happen, where because it's a big game, because it's, Old Trafford, maybe there's still some psychological barrier, but I think it still is a case of Chelsea just not fulfilling, I think, the potential or the opportunity that was really there. I think we jump forward to the second half where I think one of the things I want to credit Maresca for and what he's done so far this year, he did it away at Anfield. He will make changes. He is a proactive head coach. I think that's one of the things that we've got to give credit. And I like seeing from Enzo Maresca. I like the fact he isn't at the moment sitting on his hands and waiting for things to happen. Because at half-time, listen, it wasn't amazing. It wasn't a great football game. It wasn't a great spectacle if you're a neutral. But I think there was enough where you go, okay, if Chelsea keep on with this level of control, hopefully something will build up. But I think a lot of us were looking at that lack of execution. And I was saying in my group chats, I was saying with other people and just thinking this, that I'd rather see Reece James on that right side moving into those inside 10 positions than Malo Gusto, with the hope that in that area he could be more proactive or just making a tweak. And that's when, of course, Marc Cucurella came on and you did have that switch. So I give credit, and there were moments in the second half where Cucurella did get into those advanced positions. Reece James, not as much, unfortunately. It felt like Reece James didn't really do what Malo Gusto did, and that may have been because of Man United reacting to it at half-time and making some alterations to stop that space opening up. But it just was a bit frustrating that Reece, I think defensively, I can understand why Maresca wants him there. There were a few times, actually, to be fair, Reece was a little bit, I think, not lazy, kind of sloppy with the ball. I mean, he gave the ball away a few times in really dangerous areas that could have cost Chelsea. Chelsea were massively helped by the fact that Man United's attacking execution was really poor, particularly Garnacho, who, nearly scored a worldie at the end, but I think was pretty atrocious with his decision-making all round, and we spoke about that in our preview. The real frustration is the Man United goal comes from a penalty. Really slack defending. Fofana maybe should be judging that better, but it comes back to Robert Sanchez again. The rush of blood moment, charging out a fast centre forward in Højlund. I don't think he's a great striker. I don't think he's a very effective striker, but he is a fast striker. And against most Premier League players, if they see the goalkeeper rushing out and then you decide to rush in there, which we see Sanchez do time and again. We saw it at Anfield. We've seen it a number of times. And he gives away a penalty to Man United and a golden opportunity, which, of course, Bruno Fernandes takes. Now, if Chelsea hadn't have got back into the game, that kind of would have been the big thing. Robert Sanchez in goal, a liability. I would have been getting much more angry about the fact that we have decided to go into this season with Robert Sanchez as first choice. Even with what happened 4 minutes later, and maybe having a bit more nuance, I still just cannot comprehend how Robert Sanchez is Chelsea's first choice goalkeeper. I don't understand it. And the thing that infuriates me the most about it is this is not reactionary to what's happened this season, to today, to a few weeks ago, to the Brighton game. This is what I could have told you in May about Robert Sanchez, that he's a liability, that he is someone that sure is big, is imposing at times, can pull off some good saves, but I kind of expect a goalkeeper at this level to make some good saves. But he is a liability. Why do you want a liability in your goal? I think on the ball, he isn't as brilliant to justify that kind of risk you take and playing with fire. And I just think it's the classic, it's what I said consistently with Kepa Arrizabalaga. You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. And that is exactly what happens the longer you persist with Robert Sanchez. But unfortunately, Chelsea don't have an obvious backup here because they've decided to take their most competent keeper from last year and send him on loan to a satellite club. Jorgensen has done absolutely nothing to justify usurping Sanchez, which of course Petrovic did last year. So, that in itself is a massive problem. So Sanchez is, I think, a red flag, and he will continue to limit Chelsea's ability because in fine margin games like that, you think about that moment. United had some moments, but they weren't overwhelming us in the game, and you give them the potential to cling on to something. We're lucky that within the space of 4 minutes, Moises Caicedo decides, I'm just going to do it all myself and smack it in the bottom corner with an incredible volley. But that's a rarity from Moises Caicedo. I love Moises Caicedo. We'll talk a little bit more about Caicedo because he deserves his flowers today. Rightly man of the match. I think he was the best player on the pitch. And I felt that watching him for several weeks now, even when, of course, Palmer has been exceptional. But Caicedo has had an incredible start to his Chelsea, to his season this year for Chelsea. Of course, I think another resounding performance from him and another justification of the investment Chelsea have put in him and why he is such an integral part of this team now. But you risk it with Sanchez, right? Because I think a more smarter keeper there isn't rushing out and looking to make a challenge first thing. I think you could always see Højlund was, he's not a great informed, confident striker. I think he already was kind of thinking to himself, what am I going to do? A little bit of indecision. And he was taking it to a less favourable angle to him. And maybe, Sanchez with his height, with his posture, could maybe have, jockeyed him into an even more unfavourable position. And then you've got defenders covering. Rather than rush in, you give him an easy way out, which is basically, I'm going to take the contact. It's going to be a penalty. It is a penalty. And Man United are 1-0 up. From that moment, I did have dread that this is going to go really badly for Chelsea. And I'm going to be sat here again talking about another way Chelsea have somehow found a way to lose to a pretty poor Man United team. Incredible from Moises Caicedo. I mean, a bullet out of nowhere. I didn't see it coming. I did think Chelsea would, create things. Of course, we bought Mykhailo Mudryk on. We bought Enzo Fernandes on, who shortly after scoring had a golden opportunity himself to win the game. And I thought Jackson did really well. A mistake by Man United, and he lays it off. Jackson has done this before, but usually Cole Palmer or someone more competent standing there. I mean, Enzo Fernandes, I feel like the less said about him, the better, really. It just frustrates me looking at Enzo Fernandes and, looking at that bench where Christopher Nkunku's on there. Even Joao Felix, who didn't have a good midweek game, but Nkunku, Felix, I would have preferred either of those on the pitch compared to Enzo Fernandes, who is not justifying anything currently to be in this Chelsea team. I mean, it's just absolutely tragic. And that moment there could have been a season turnaround moment for him, but he completely failed, flapped it, unfortunately. There are, of course, a few more scary moments where Man United were on the counter trying to make something happen, but the game kind of faded away and it ends in a draw. So Moises Caicedo, absolutely outstanding. The way he covers ground, the way he intercepts, the way on the ball. He is just, I think, even better than I expected him to be. I think the way he's able to he's kind of what you'd want Fernandes to be if he had the mobility, which again, it lessens the reason to have Fernandes in the team, right? And Fernandes, I don't even think on the ball has been that good this year. So the way Caicedo at times, there was a moment in the first half where he skipped through a few United challenges and then looked up and a crossfield ball, but it was slightly overhit. Neto did well to keep it in and won Chelsea a foul in a dangerous area. But I just think Caicedo all round is, and he made a brilliant tackle late on that could have led to a United winner. all round, he is absolutely the dominant central midfielder Chelsea have been crying out for. I think defensively aware, effective, covers ground so well, is a monster in there, wants to win his battles, is effective, is assured. He's everything we wanted Caicedo to be. So I think him and Lavia, I keep on speaking about it, it's a partnership I want to see grow and blossom and get better. A big challenge for them next week, of course, against Arsenal, but given the way they've handled especially the Liverpool game. Of course, this was not to the same level, but I think the way they've handled games recently really encourages me. So for Chelsea, he was the outstanding performer. I thought defensively, again, a lapse that, really costs us and costs us at least the 3 points. It's always one of those things, right, where games stay. Do Chelsea go on and win the game if it stays at 0-0? Given the way the game was flowing at that point, probably not. It felt like a pretty dead game. Maresca, I think, was right to be proactive in his substitutions at halftime. I think the selection of his later subs were not as good. I don't think either Mudryk has more of a justification, of course, to get some more minutes. But, where is Nkunku? Where is Joao Felix? I think either of those, especially Nkunku, could have been used off the bench in this situation. And we move on now, of course, to the Noah game. But I guess from a Premier League point of view, I'm more thinking about that Arsenal game next week before the international break. And I kind of think, Chelsea, it's not... Listen, the phrase of "it's a must-win" is obviously just farcical, but I do think it would be huge if Chelsea could beat Arsenal. Arsenal are not where they have been in recent times. Of course, they lost yesterday to Newcastle. They've had some difficult results. I don't think they've won in their last 3, at least, Premier League games since the international break. So they're not on the greatest run. And I think at the Bridge, with the level of performance from certain players, if we can bring that up another notch, really, the Stamford Bridge would be rocking if we were somehow able to beat Arsenal next weekend. I think it'd be a really statement victory. It would really solidify, I think, what has been, with some setbacks, a strong start to the year, or a better than expected start to the year for Enzo Maresca, because that table is looking pretty healthy at the moment for Chelsea. It's just being able to take these opportunities a bit more, because I think for the... you do need a big win eventually, because I just think it will buy Maresca more credit. He's got a little bit more criticism over the past week. I think that'd be huge. It's a moment within the season. I think it's a unifying moment for this group, who I think didn't rise to the occasion today, unfortunately, in the way I expected, especially in an attacking point of view. So that's frustrating. But we didn't lose. It's frustrating, and hopefully we can do something big against Arsenal next week, and of course the Noah game that we'll be covering later next week. But that is it for today. Let me know your thoughts. Please do give the podcast a rate and review if you're listening that way. Please hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.